Hey there, nice to see you guys.
Nice to have you here. Thank you.
Oh yeah, it's a pleasure.
Here we go.
Ashley's going to give people some instructions. Then I'll do a brief introduction, and then we can, you guys can just start talking.
Perfect.
Okay, just
Great.
a second. So this is mostly for attendees. I just wanted to go over some Zoom navigation and housekeeping. So it might look a little different if you're on a phone or an iPad, but as you will see, you should only be able to see our videos and a shared screen if they end up sharing a screen, but you should only be seeing the panelist videos. In a webinar, you will not see other participants or be able to control your video or microphone. If you look at the bottom of your Zoom meeting, you should see the following options along the bottom. You should see chat, raise hand, Q&A, and leave. You can use the chat feature to introduce yourself, make a comment, or receive help from the moderator. If you decide to use the chat, make sure you select the Send to Panelists and Attendees in the blue drop-down menu just above the text box where you type, so that way everybody gets your message, since it will automatically default to send just to panelists. You can use the raise hand feature if you have a question or concern, and you will be addressed at a good stopping point or instructed to use the chat feature. You can use the Q&A feature to ask questions pertaining to the session, and they will be answered live or via text. You can use the leave button to exit the webinar. For the chat and Q&A, they do have similar features, but if we do want to keep the session questions in the Q&A versus the chat, so it'll just make sure we don't miss any questions or they don't get lost in the chat. But depending on the session, your questions may be addressed at a good stopping point during the presentation or held into the until the end. All sessions will be recorded and available after the conference. And please reach out to either Michael or myself with any technical assistance, and we'll do our best to help you out. That's
Thanks.
all. Yeah, thanks.
Thanks very much, Ashley. I wonder how many times you're going to say that over the next week.
We'll find out.
I guess we will. So welcome everybody who's on the panel and also everybody in the audience. This is our panel on diversity, equity, and inclusion. As we've all seen in the last year, COVID has illustrated that we are all on this earth together. All of our voices are important and necessary. Inequity in our health system and the murder of George Floyd prompted many organizations, including the NMFMA, to create a diversity, equity, and inclusion statement that now we're intending to operate with and by. As individuals, we may think we're not racist, but we live in a very racist culture which favors whiteness pervasively, from Band-Aids to bank loans. Many of us move around our world quite ignorant of how this affects folks who are not white. At the NMFMA, we are committed to becoming more aware of this and to become better allies in the ongoing struggle against systemic racism. The panel we have here, who will introduce themselves shortly, will speak to us about their experiences in the local food system. They are not representatives of their race any more than any of us are representatives of white people. Their experiences of life in the US is different from ours, and they each have unique perspectives on our food system. I am grateful that they are here today, willing to share with us. Each of the participants will speak, and then we'll have a Q&A. When the Q&A begins, all of you will be unmuted and can join into the conversation. We'll be able to see you if you want to turn on your video. At that point, I'll put our DIA statement into the chat. If anyone has questions about it, we can answer those then. Again, thanks for being here. And panelists, you can take it away.
Good afternoon. Hi, Tiana. Hi, Julieta. It's great to see you both. Thank you for having us, Sarah. Ashley, it was wonderful to hear your voice. And we had an opportunity to get together beforehand. And so I think we're just gonna jump in. Does that feel good to my co-panelists?
Oh yeah.
Okay, wonderful. So who would like to start with an introduction?
Sunshine?
Sure. And I see
Whoever's
Nate is
prepared.
here. Is
I'm
Nate gonna
here.
be okay? Cool. Welcome. Yes. Oh
I was
wow.
floating around in space.
I
I'll
like
introduce
it.
myself. How about that?
Go for it.
And then we're gonna popcorn. I'll toss it to somebody. So be ready. Sarah Grant, thank you so much. Ashley, thank you for the intro. I'm sure it's locked in your brain and you can say it in your sleep. But thanks for setting us up and getting us ready. And Sarah, thank you for the invite. My name is Nathanial Jones. I'm a general consultant at the Red Willow Center in Taos Pueblo. The majority of my focus is on human resource management and training and development. So, but my real job is humanities. So in human resource management, there is really no place for diversity, equity, and inclusion because that is part of humanity. So it's not a separate chapter. It's not a separate statement. It's about representation and taking care of each other as human beings. But we do live on this planet and we do live in this country where we have some serious issues to address. Frankly, George Floyd is just a pin in the timeline. It's something that's been happening for hundreds of years. And my experience as a Black man is, frankly, it's just been an opportunity to, I guess, say the things that have already been said for a long time. So we live in a pretty important time where, the technology allows us to stay connected in a lot of ways, but it also disconnects us in many more. So what's important for me is to work with Tiana in representing myself as a Black man and her as an Indigenous woman. We have a lot of things that we share traumatically, unfortunately, and then there are a lot of victories that we've been able to push ourselves and each other through. So when I speak of representation, our organization is represented pretty well, but what we need is for statewide organizations like the New Mexico Farmers Market Association to move from diversity, equity, and inclusion into representation. When I look at some of the webinars that have gone on this week, I'm grateful for the platform and the information that's being shared. But what I see is those of us that are being served are people of color, and those of us that are making the decisions for those communities are not. And there are a few exceptions, but there's quite an imbalance. And so essentially what I'm saying is representation to me is the most important thing. I'll let Sunshine hop in if she would like to.
Sure. So my name is Sunshine Muse. I run a nonprofit in New Mexico called Black Health New Mexico. We are very honored to, I'm actually going to put what I wrote right there in the chat, that we're honored to run a farm to table program. We purchase fresh fruit and produce from northern New Mexico farms, and we really try to center women-owned farms and people of color-owned farms, which also translates into family-owned farms. I have been doing equity work my whole career, so for over 25 years. And I think that along with what Nate says, we're actually going to encourage the Farmers Market Association to take a much bigger leap than you may have anticipated. It turns out that equity work has been around since the 1960s, and we still suffer from grave inequity, economic inequity, health outcome inequity, incarceration inequity, and financial inequity. And so we are gonna help you guys think a little bit differently and move a little bit faster, because we know that you're up for the task and we know that the task is urgent. And I'm happy to share more after my colleagues introduce. So Julieta.
Hi, everyone. So my name is Julieta Saucedo. My pronouns are she, her, ella. And I am the owner and operator of a farm named Muros de Adobe Agroecology Farm, which has a lot of dreams and plans that are in progress. And I also work as a food safety technician and farm education assistant at La Semilla Food Center. My work is mostly around soil health and land healing, and I think that as we heal the land and as we heal empty spaces, we can heal also the empty spaces in our communities. I want to eventually work or have in the farm only employ women, particularly former incarcerated, dealing with addiction, or houseless, because that is a minority that our society likes to ignore in many ways. And not only for that, like all humans should have the opportunity of be humans, and that's something that we forget pretty often. Yeah, and just in this introduction, I want to leave you with 3 questions, and then that I want you to keep in your head. 3 things. Let me just put it there. Yes. So you are doing the same job task than someone else, and you're getting a crappier reward. How would you feel? How would you be feeling if it takes you twice that work to get the good reward? What if no one where you want to get to looks like you and that you own your story? And so, Tiana.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Sarah, Ashley, Michael, and Denise for having us here. So yeah, my name's Tiana Suazo. I am from Taos and Jemez Pueblos, but I reside in Taos Pueblo. I am the executive director of Red Willow Center. Red Willow Center is really here to reclaim the agricultural heritage of Taos Pueblo and to restore its traditional food systems. Personally, I believe farming is really good for healing. Yeah, and ultimately, of course, getting healthier. But I really like to look at farming as healing from a lot of the intergenerational and historical trauma that stemmed from the attempted genocide of Native peoples. So I'm gonna leave it at that, and I'm ready to get into some discussion.
So I want to say that before coming to the panel, I was reading about the shooting in Colorado, and of course was aware of the shooting last week in Atlanta. And it did get my, emotions and blood moving. And it really made me think as I approached the panel that in this country, as a Western culture, we don't mourn. And that failure to mourn is really incredibly dangerous because it means that we, one, try to move past things so quickly that we can't correct them, that we profoundly lack accountability for our experiences and the experiences of others, and that we sort of float in this space of no context around why things are the way they are. And so when we attempt to make them better, we're rootless, right? Because we're contextless. So I just want to acknowledge that, if we learn how to mourn, the colonization of the land, the loss of land, the loss of lives, African-American slavery in the Americas was 13 generations long. So if you want to get a sense of what mourning would look like, it's mourning not 10 years or 50 years or even a century. It's mourning 13 generations of lives impacted. When we talk about food, we know that food can change our physical outcomes and our health outcomes, and that's really my angle. But we also know that trauma and the trauma of racism and colonialism also changes health outcomes for the negative. So I think that food and land for people of color has a unique impact. And it is healing, and it is healing the historical and current context of the racist society that we live in. So, we have to mourn. That's what I wanted to say. And I also want to acknowledge that anyone who's farming in New Mexico is farming on indigenous land. And that a big part of equity is actually going to be land redistribution, which I think is really traumatizing for a lot of people to even consider. But when we get to a place of equity and re-leveling the platform in this country, it's going to mean that many people have to give up something, even if they feel like they've worked hard for it. This is not just about slogans and terms and statements and workshops. Ultimately, this is about action and a redistribution of power.
Thank you, Sunshine. Especially noticing that the New Mexico Farmers Market Association has been able to bring on more staff, and it sounds like there's still some tough things to handle with a few vacancies. I had some flashbacks to when Tiana and I were essentially on our own doing the farming and moving into recruiting, training, and hiring, and working with the board, looking at all the logistics, but also trying to figure out how to just take care of the land. And I'll be honest, there was a lot of mourning. And the beautiful thing about solidarity is that as we grew closer, not only as friends and chosen family, but as coworkers, it was a lot easier to mourn kind of the things that she had gone through in this leadership position to get to where she is now, but also the things that I was going through. And then the collective mourning of what was going on in our community, in Taos Pueblo, in Taos County, in the state of New Mexico, as well as the whole planet. So that mourning is so important. And the farming is a tool that was taken from us in a lot of ways. And speaking for the Black community, people that eventually were freed, locked up again, and then freed again. It was a tool. It was more than just about the food. The food came, but as far as our bodies were healthy because we were working for the things that we were able to share with the community. And there was true grace and true acceptance of that moment before we ate because of how much time and energy was spent on the land. And so it's indigenous to many of us, and it's difficult to watch it become popularized, and it's less medicine and less of a tool and more of more marketable, right? I'm all about urban farming, but who's really benefiting from in those communities? I'm from Southeast Michigan, and anybody wants to talk about what's really going on in Detroit, I'll be happy to have that conversation. But it's pretty inequitable. So thank you for bringing up the mourning. And really it reminded me how farming is a tool for that healing, and it provides a space for mourning. Thank you, Sunshine.
Yeah, thank you, Sunshine, for bringing up the mourning. Like immediately when, you stated that we don't mourn, like without mourning, we just normalize all of this hate. And it's really what it is hate. And it's just okay. And that's why it keeps happening. And that's why people are like, oh my gosh, I don't know what's going on here. Yeah, I just wanted to say that if we don't mourn, we're just normalizing it all. And yeah, thank God for the gardens and the fields that we're able to go into. Not only are we able to mourn there, but we're able to really, like Nate said, give thanks for still being able to be here and farm and use the seeds that we have. To me, it really connects me to my culture and like all that's been lost, lives and knowledge and memories. Thank you for bringing that up.
Yes, such an important practice. I don't know, this last shootings, like they make a line towards the past, like the shooting in El Paso, targeting also Mexicans, like all these race targeted events, right? It makes me think about a lot about all the shootings that we don't hear, like the shootings in the border, hunting immigrants, the shootings in the desert, just that we don't know that happened, that they are there, that they have in many times like a hate motive, and how we don't really process it, or how it is not being processed because it is an ugly truth, an uncomfortable truth that is hard for a lot of people to take intentional and accurate action. Mhm. Thank you, Sunshine, for bringing that up.
I want to ask a question to my fellow panelists. Um, where is a place where you feel safe?
I feel safest out of the United States of America because being Black in America is traumatizing 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And I'm a joyful person, an optimist, and an incredibly loving being. And anyone who knows me for at least a day can testify to that. But it's a horrible place to live when you're Black, and you can't earn your way out of it. You can't educate your way out of it. You can't age your way out of it. You can't skinny your way out of it. You can't fashion your way out of it. It's just a place where violence and visibility constantly go hand in hand. I really want to give some context, and I'm happy to come back to that, but that's what I want to offer next after this round of questions. So I feel safer out of the United States of America. And second to that, on any predominantly Black beach in the United States of America, where ironically I can see towards home, right? Because I come from a lineage of enslaved people who were forced to the country across the sea.
I feel safest. Honestly, I just thought of my little Pueblo house in our village at the base of the mountain. That's so crazy. That's something that has always come up in my mind of like, where can I feel safest and where can I survive? And that's within my community. And it does really in its own way feel like its own little country away from everything else. Time is definitely slower. The people are different. We speak differently. It just feels different. And being in the village, it reminds me of just like being back in time of how it really was when we really took care of each other. And really it was all about the food. And yeah, being within my village and looking up at the mountain like that really feels safe to me because I know that it'll give me everything that I need and I can give everything that it needs to it.
I love you, Tiana. I love you all, the three of you. But I guess for me, the word I feel safe it will be a little different my answer because, well, I am very white looking, right? I happen to be Mexican. English happen to be my second language. So in many places, I feel safe, but there are also many of those places where I only feel safe as long as I don't have to speak because I have an accent, right? And I used to, that made me think like how I used to apologize because of my accent. And I guess it's just, yeah, like when you realize that you're apologizing for something that actually adds value to your skills, it's like, why am I apologizing for having an accent? Like I'm fluent in 2 languages, right? But yeah, so in that term, that way, my answer is a little different than yours. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
How about you, Nate?
Wow. I feel safest with my immediate family, honestly. I think, yeah. Where I grew up, Black men were looked at as a threat. So even if I felt safe, I didn't feel secure because it meant that me stepping into a room was threatening someone else, right? Just because, yeah, and I'm 6'4", so, but I feel safest with my immediate family. I can sing the songs I grew up with. I can sing the songs I listen to. The food, the smells, the noises are all familiar. Even if it's my nieces and nephews and they're small and they can't necessarily protect me, I think my spirit is at ease when I'm with immediate family. It's ironic because in Taos, there's really not a whole lot of things to worry about, especially considering where I was born and raised. But at the same time, yeah, I feel othered all the time, which makes me feel unsafe. So, yeah, immediate family is my safe place. Thank you.
So I'd love to share a little bit of context just because I wanted to talk about why food matters, you know, for Black people. And of course, we're not a monolith, but we do have a shared experience of oppression, current and past. And we have an epigenetic imprint from that oppression, current and past. And I also wanted to just share a little bit, I'm going to my notes around, you know, Black people and food in terms of debunking the myth that somehow Black people don't know how to eat or don't value vegetables or fresh produce, are just sort of like fast food or sugar and alcohol junkies. I wanted to really push us past that into some of the facts. And so I wanted to also highlight in doing that, that one of the reasons that diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts often fail is because they give no context to their work. So just really wanting to bring that back around again. The context for African-American farmers in particular is one of discrimination and violence. And it's led to the decline of Black farmers from 14% of all growers in the colonial United States in 1920 to less than 2% today. And that's with the corresponding loss of over 14 million acres of land. So in 1920, 14% of all growers in the USA were Black. And we had 14 million acres of land that we were farming. You know, it's how did that happen, right? We know that most people who are Black, there's such a thing as the Great Migration. You can Google it, and it talks about Black people leaving the South and areas where they were farming. And they didn't leave because they didn't value food or land or nature or farming or family. They left because they were run out literally by racial violence. And those who wanted to stay and were willing to weather the storm of that racialized violence were denied access to bank loans and lines of credit and capital. They were barred from owning land based on violence and intimidation and racist practices for how they had to prove ownership of their land so that they continue to farm it and earn enough money to take care of their families. And they were purposely docked and priced down when they were trying to sell their goods, not because of crop quality, but because of racism. So we're talking about over the past century that this has completely changed sort of Black people's lives in America. And today, Blacks own about less than 1% of farmland is stewarded by Black farmers. So this is a contextual issue, right? It's a historical issue, it's systemic, it's sophisticated, it's intentional, and worst of all, it's untaught and undiscussed. In the current farming landscape for Black people in the colonial United States, we're stewarding about a quarter. Our land sizes when we do own farms are about a quarter of the size, the average size compared to our white counterparts. According to the Center for American Progress, as of 2017, the average full-time white farmer brought in about $17,000 in farm income, while the average full-time Black farmer brought in about $2,500. How else does this show up? It shows up that in 2020, over 97% of the $46 billion in agricultural subsidies went to white farmers, over 97%. And white farmers now account for 98% of the acres, according to the USDA. So we have a lot of issues, and there's been a great income loss. Academic estimates of the economic loss to Black farmers due to USDA policies and racism suggest that we've lost between $250 and $350 billion in income that we would have made through agriculture were we not run off our land. So when Black people are eating fast food or not coming to farmers markets, it's not because we don't understand nor have intergenerational experiences, positively and negatively, with wonderful organic pesticide-free produce. It's that we've literally been redlined and physically violated to have to leave our land. And that food can be healing in terms of bringing it back into our lives, but there's also a trauma barrier that we have to cross in order to begin to embrace it. I wanted to share that context. We're not new to this conversation. Colonialism and white supremacy will tell you that you need to help folks figure out how to farm and how to eat well. It's all malarkey. The truth is that we're original agriculturists, but we haven't been allowed because of racism and violence to continue in that stead. And our bodies are suffering for it. We have some of the highest death rates in the country across chronic disease and condition areas. And that's my foray in Black Health, New Mexico.
Thank you for sharing that, Sunshine. Yeah. Well, just hearing your discussion made me think about our mission at Red Willow of revitalizing our agricultural heritage and our foodways. Food was definitely used as a tool against Native peoples in our attempted genocide for like 500 years. You know, I feel colonizers really saw how strong our food systems were and how we were able to take care of the land and have the land take care of us, and they completely turned that against us. I mean, you'll read throughout history how our food systems were taken away, the buffalo were killed, you know, nomadic tribes were taken from the lands in which they traveled and put into a land completely different from what they had known. Our seeds were taken away. Like, it's crazy to me. Like in 2017, we had a whole rematriation ceremony here in Taos Pueblo about our traditional squash, which was just given back to us in 2017, after like God knows how many years of sitting in a seed library in some Ivy League college somewhere. It's just insane. Like, yeah, I'm really glad that we have this opportunity to really speak about what we have been through. How our land was taken away, how our food was taken away, how our seeds were taken away and really used against us. And it's crazy. Like, I feel, you know, a lot of people look at Native people as just like, you know, having a lot of health issues, diabetes and all of that. But where did that really come from? You know, if you take away our food systems, the American government just gave us commodities, which were all just basic generic foods made from like, with the poorest health standards, made from like the easiest to grow seeds or whatever. And that's all that we were given as our food systems were taken away and all of our food was taken away. And with assimilation coming in the later years, as like early as like 1940 or 50, you know, you were constantly being told as Native people that our agricultural ways are not helpful for us. And if we want to survive in this world, we need to learn how to be white, basically. And so much from that has happened. You know, so many of our people were moved from our communities and put in these cities just to assimilate. And with that, like in the work that I'm doing, I'm seeing a huge gap. You know, we have these elder farmers who have the bulk of our traditional agricultural knowledge, and these young people such as myself who really want to learn. And I see in between that, like there's generations of people who just don't know, you know, how to plant or how or what or when or how or where even. Yeah, it's a lot. I encourage everyone just to read, do your own research, you know, talk to Indigenous people to really get their perspectives, because I cannot speak for anyone. I'm just speaking of what I see and what I experience. Yeah, talk to people, you know, get involved, really learn how to be an ally. And, you know, as much as like DEIs are cool and now they're not that cool. I want to know what people are going to do. I want to see the action that's going to come to like remedy at least a fraction of what was done to all of us here. So yeah, I'm feeling all fired up. Thank you, Sunshine. I'm like, yeah, and if anyone has any more questions for me or like wants any more context behind what I'm speaking about, like feel free to email me or whatever, because we can go on and on about all of this, and we only have 20 minutes left. So yeah, I'm gonna leave it up to my fellow panelists to speak into this as well. But man, I am fired up. So get out there and educate yourself.
Our time officially ends at 3, but we don't have anything going on after this. So if people want to stay longer, they're certainly welcome. And I'm happy to hear what you have to say, Tiana, because it's true. We all could use to hear it from you and from everybody else again and again and again and again. So thanks.
I will say I greatly appreciate the historical context, Sunshine. And it needs to be inundated on a regular basis, just like U.S. history was implanted in our minds. The same stories of saviorism from day one in both public and private institutions that I attended. It was the same U.S. history. And I remember telling my freshman year, I told my professor, I have zero interest in this. You know, he approached me because I was an honor student. I was on a scholarship and I had I had a great GPA, but I was failing U.S. history. And I told him I had no interest in U.S. history. I've already learned the things that you're spitballing. And so he gave me an opportunity to really explore. And that changed a lot of things. That changed my studies. But we need to keep reminding each other and others of the fact that in the United States Department of Agriculture was complicit in that extraction, that theft, very strategic, took all that land. It's also important to know that the US government used the military to push indigenous folks off of their land and out of their tribal yeah. So anyway, it is important to explore this history over and over and over again, because the story of this country is really a story of migration, immigration, and a whole lot of violence. Not a lot of it was voluntary, at least not for the panelists here. And the shame behind our accents or our looks or our positions or our lack of education, there's a place for it. We need to continue to share that story as well, and to really embody that so that we can work through it together. But the historical context is important for me because the invite from the New Mexico Farmers Market Association is a great step in the right direction, because NMFA, like, you guys have contact with the USDA, Thornburg, all these funders. I can't hold funders responsible right now and saying, hey, let's work together in solidarity. and focus on a more equitable approach. That's really difficult. I would love to, and we're working on that in this community that I work out of. But to be perfectly honest, whoever's writing those checks can make a much bigger, much quicker, and more impactful difference on our food and ag communities than any of us can. And that's the reality. Until I get there, or Sunshine or Tiana, Julieta, right? But what we're doing is we're working on our own projects for our own communities because we know that's the quickest way to heal. That's the quickest way to move in solidarity. But I'm happy to take the corporate approach, you know, not for free, but I'll sit with any organization, especially with a platform like the New Mexico Farmers Market Association has, where you can speak to these things. Because what's going to happen is what was mentioned before of we're not mourning, and it's just, you know, it's another swipe, it's another click, it's another flash, and we're moving on and ready to get back to normal until there's another shooting, and then another shooting, and another killing. And what's happening is happening, like it's already going on. We just haven't seen it yet, right? So feel free to ask questions of me. We can drop our contact info here. Like Sarah said, we have time, but there's a lot of history that we need to go through. And to be honest, I'm probably not going to see it in my lifetime. So this is for your children, for your grandchildren. This is for your nieces and nephews. It's not for me. I don't know. I think it's a little too late for me to see what I want to see, but I will die before I give up on the work of solidarity. And I plan on living a long time.
Me
Glad to
too.
hear that.
I'm also planning to live in a long time. I'm sorry, Sarah, I didn't mean to.
Oh, no, go ahead.
And we do have, there's a question in the chat box, but I was just wondering, we could also promote people to panelists. And so you could see each other's faces as you're talking as well.
So Ashley, if there's any way for us to just keep going, because we don't have this opportunity very often, and because probably most of the things that are going to be asked can be Googled, honestly, and read about, we'd like to just have the space to continue talking and sharing, if that's okay. And we're happy to come back at another time if you guys want us to have continued conversation that's more interactive. But in our planning session, we really decided that we just wanted this opportunity to share.
Perfect. Sounds good.
Awesome. Thank you.
We can also drop our emails in the chat box or something. If, by the way, I saw a question earlier. Where are we from? I am from El Paso, Texas. I have El Paso, Texas and Chaparral, New Mexico. Those are the two locations of my work. And then my other work, the one that I get pay taxes and all with it, is in Anthony, New Mexico, which are pretty close together. Just a little late to answer that question. I hope that person's still there somewhere around. And going back to what we were talking about, I want to bring to the table the topic of image, like the image we have of the people that does the work and the people that does it. Not that everyone does the work in a way or another, but I want to bring up what we think about when we think of a farmer. Like, what image comes to our minds? Is it short, tall, big, small? How does it look, right? And what image comes to our minds when we think of a farm worker? And I think that for a lot of you, a pretty clear image is going to come to your mind when you think about a farm worker. And I just want to acknowledge that that image most likely is in human conditions, and no one should have to work in those conditions as a farm worker, right? And also going back to what image come to our mind when we think about who the farmer is. Many times I've been asked, like, who is the farmer when I'm working at the land? And I'm not even And I just look at them like, it's me, hi. Yes, I'm a lady, short, tiny Mexican lady doing this job. Yeah, that's, I just want that to stick with you, and try to change their image. Try to change the face of the characters of this story, because that is causing and been causing historically a lot of harm in our communities. And also in the way that representation is being bring up. Um, and I want to bring here the part of the like farm workers, mostly immigrant, not necessarily from Mexican ascendants, from different cultures, a variety of cultures, non-European cultures. They live behind a lot of things. They lose a lot of their practice, of their traditional practice, not necessarily indigenous, but mostly indigenous. They have to adapt to a method or a methodology on how to work and cultivate the land. And they just have to suck it up on how much they get, on what they get from that. Um, so it is a lot of things that people change. Like in my case, I have the privilege that I have access to land and that I can work the land however I want. But a lot of people doesn't, and a lot of people has to live and impose circumstances because they don't see another choice. And it is, and we have to change that. We have to start opening those paths so people can live their best lives, like, and cultivate the land and have access to the land and do it for what their best interests are in relation to their culture, in relation to their spirits and to their hearts, right? Because if we are honest, no culture except for like certain, I don't know who's in the audience, so, but except for certain agricultural practices, has a culture of harming the land. Most of it is everything working in harmony, and like where everything works for both, for the human who is working the land and for the land that is feeding the human, right? So yeah, welcome to my TED Talk. I don't know if
I'm really curious, and Nate started to touch on it, what you all feel like NMFA can do, NMFMA can do to support progression, reasonably timed progression on some of the issues that we're talking about. So how can this organization help to create more equity with food and farming in New Mexico? And food access, right? Food access.
Yeah, yes, we can do an hour on this. So the Red Willow Center. So we're in Taos. We're in Taos. That's another hour or 6. But the town of Taos gets a lot of attention, but the outside areas, right? Like Taos is this great tourist attraction and yada yada yada. One of the highest nonprofits per capita in the country for a lot of reasons, and so one of those reasons is that the lack of local support from our government, lack of local support and true solidarity from the town and from the county. And they're working on that, right? They're working on their own representation. It's going to take a lot longer than I think the Farmers Market Association is moving in much quicker fashion. But in the nonprofit sector, we are just looking for more partnerships. And with those partnerships, it's about mission and values and not about just getting more funding. We know that the USDA likes to see connections, right? We know that the USDA likes to see several organizations serving traditionally marginalized communities, right? Like you can write that narrative all day. We can look at census numbers, which aren't fully accurate because for a lot of historically traumatic reasons, and say that this, most organizations in the state of New Mexico will get funded federally because of straight up race and ethnicity statistics from our census. More importantly, when we have a statewide organization like the Farmers Market, when we work with Cuesta Farmers Market, for instance, and they have funding, and that funding is for food banks or shelters, that funding is helpful, but it also is harmful when it goes away. So it provides an opportunity to partner up. It provides an opportunity for those two organizations to share their story, right? So both, and forgive me, but both Cuesta Farmers Market and the Red Willow Center are struggling to find funding that doesn't put us in this mission fatigue loop where we're working so hard to fill out deliverables that we forget about our true community members. So when we work together with a funding cycle, it makes it difficult to maintain meaningful relationships, and it also takes away from the true goal of systemic change. What I'm looking for is a way to secure funding long term so that we could support the farmers market in Cuesta and vice versa. What I'm looking for is funding so that Penasco Schools doesn't have two older community members using their truck, their energy, and their time to do food drives when there's money out there that could support a position to do that. That means, for lack of a better term, that means a seat at the table, whatever proverbial table that looks like. And again, I think the New Mexico Farmers Market Association is working towards a more balanced board and staff representation and working on that inclusion factor, but it's the representation. And so what we need is people that are directly impacted by the funding or the lack thereof, by the cycle and by the reporting. We need those people to say how it's helpful and also how it's harmful. That's what's most important. If we can't be a part of the financial narrative, then we're just going to be playing the merry-go-round and going through mission fatigue from filling out deliverables and not being able to work for true systemic change.
Beautiful, Nate. I'm watching the clock too. And I'm looking at these women. I'm looking at Julieta thinking, and I'm looking at Tiana leaning. So who's gonna go next?
Well, I'll go next because actually our youth program is starting at 3 o'clock. And I want to be there to really greet these kids and say, hey, I'm so glad you're here. Let's learn together and dismantle all of this oppressive racist stuff. But anyway, I just kind of want to know why hasn't NMFMA really done their history or like their research on the history, at least within New Mexico, about everything, and why this DEI statement is coming out so late, and why it's like, why now in 2021 are we like, okay, we need to be more inclusive, we need to be this and that. I know for sure there is this like tricultural myth within New Mexico, and maybe that's what makes people think like, oh, like we live in New Mexico, we're automatically inclusive, we're okay. I want to know really like why there really hasn't, or where the research is backing up your programs and your work that you're doing, and really like are all of you, your board, your staff, educating yourselves on the tribes within New Mexico and just the surrounding areas too, and how you can really be helpful to them. Because in all of my life, like a lot of communities do have their own farmers markets or their own food system set up, but I've never seen the New Mexico Farmers Market anywhere else but, kind of within Taos Pueblo. And that's because we're sort of an established farm. But what's the work that you guys are doing to help Indigenous farmers or help Indigenous farmers markets, or what are you providing to them? And if you decide to do that and when you're figuring it out, yeah, kind of along the lines of what Nate was saying, any like applying for anything or kind of like grant application or reporting or whatever, like I think the next thing to do is just to learn how to decolonize all of that and really just visit like these communities if you can, like get to know the people, get to know those foodways and appreciate them and acknowledge them. So yeah, I'm gonna leave it at that. I'm gonna drop my email in the chat because I think the kids are coming and they mean more to me than really anything because they're our future and I want to empower them and help educate them and get them connected with their community because shoot, they're going to be taking care of all of this like when we're long gone. So yeah, they're my focus right now. So thank you. Thank you for inviting me onto this panel. And thank you, Sunshine, Julieta, and Nate, for just being the amazing people that you are. And I'm so excited for what we're all going to do in the future and how we can all be there to support one another. So call me if you guys need anything, seeds, knowledge, help. Nate and I are here.
I love
Thanks.
you, right?
Thank you very much, Tiana. We really appreciate your being here. And keep on being fired up.
Julieta, how about you?
I don't have much to say. I mean, grants are always welcome for everyone. Yeah, so that would be my input because grants are always welcome. I would have to think that question more. I just feel like, for example, like in Chaparral where I am, that we are so disconnected from many things. Like our closest New Mexico thing is Anthony, and that's it. Because the next one is like Alamogordo to the north, and then like just, and then going west like Cruces, and then like to get to Albuquerque and Santa Fe is just a long way from there. So yeah, just so I'll leave it at grants are always welcome for everyone, and the directors of the organizations are always prepared to handle and manage those grants. Also, the farmers are prepared for it. So.
I'd like to offer that working with the organization, New Mexico Farmers Market Association, to see if within your membership and within your board, you can make a really focused commitment to build capacity of previously marginalized or de-landed peoples in the state of New Mexico, so that it's not odd or what's the word, or new when you start to prioritize building capacity for traditionally marginalized communities, right? So get to the place where it's not weird. It's just what you do because it's part of your mission. Yeah, so I'd say capacity building. I support the ask for grants. And I want to reinforce what Nate said, which is that when you have people of color at the table, the conversation changes. Not only does the content change, but the rhythm of it changes, the length of it changes, the style of it changes. And the next steps, the action items change because of the content that's brought forward by the lived experience. So it's not enough to have people of color part-time or semi-part-time or as a side dish. If you begin to center the narrative of people of color, that's what representation looks like. And inclusion can look like, we're going to include you, but we're still not going to talk to you. Inclusion is integration. And integration not only failed, but was horribly painful for the people who had to integrate. Horribly, horribly painful. And so in 2021, we really have to graduate past inclusion. And we just have to actualize equity, which means leveling the playing field with a concerted, actionable, consistent effort to bring people in. I have us at 5 minutes past the hour. I too am gonna get ready to bail out. Sarah, I'm so grateful that you had us. Nate, I love how you be. Julieta, I love how you stay. And it's just a pleasure. And maybe we could come back and have a second conversation and some consultation role or whatever works for the genius that has shown up today. So I want to thank all the listeners too. And gratitude again to our hosts for wanting to have this conversation and being gentle enough with yourselves and this process to allow it to go where it needed to. I'm at blackhealthnewmexico.com. That's easy peasy. And I see John Nutting has been in the chat quite a bit. So yeah, John, I hope you're a voice that can help make some of the changes that we've asked for, and that will have the courage and consistency to reach out to us so that it's not on our behalf, it's with us.
Thanks so much for Sunshine for being here. Thank you guys for just taking charge. It certainly made my life easier and the whole panel discussion a whole lot richer than it would have been. And so I really appreciate that. And I certainly hope that we can engage you in some way in the future. And that when we do, that you'll say, wow, they're kind of walking the talk. And that is truly our aspiration. And I'm looking forward to hearing back from you guys that both in terms of suggestions, but more so just to confirm that, yeah, we're actually being able to pull it off in more than just a statement.
You know, Martin Luther King published this great book. It's called Why We Can't Wait. No time like the present. It's been a pleasure, everybody. Have a wonderful day.
Thanks again, Sarah. And always a pleasure. Julieta, Sunshine. Let's get your hands in the dirt, Sunshine.
I can't wait to get up there. Are you kidding? Not only do I want to eat it, but now I want to like roll around in it.
Right.
Hey, we got good soil.
Okay, I'm coming up.
Julieta, I'm coming to El Chuco April 5th. So
Yes, let me know.
I'll let you know.
Yeah, I'll show you at least the backyard. I can show you.
Yeah.
Well,
so good to see you. Thanks again, everyone.
So good, everyone, and thank you, everyone, for listening. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yay.
Thank you, Ashley.
Transformation. Thank you, Ashley. We love you, Ashley. Totally. I don't really know how to do that thing, but
you got it.
Okay, I got it. Cool.
Yeah, thank you all so much. It was really good to sit down and actually get to hear from you guys. So hopefully we can do this again. Yeah.
We'll definitely try to do it again.
Yeah, that'd be great.
And everybody who's part of the audience, you did hear what we said here, that the New Mexico Farmers Marketing Association is committed to work on all of the things these guys talked about, so that next year, if you don't notice that we're doing it, you can call us on it, and we'll, hopefully that won't happen, but we are committed going forward, and thanks everybody.
So good to hear.
Yeah. Thanks
really
again, Sarah. I'm gonna go catch Tiana and those kids.
I'm gonna go too. Bye, everybody.
Sure.
Bye. I have to go back to be a mom, so bye, everyone.